All right, Guru Nation, we got Fraud Pod, not legal, tax, or God forbid, medical advice. All
Just to be
right.
clear, this is the international edition.
Thank you, because what you're doing is very unique. I think I've done live streams with people from India.
Oh,
However,
have you? Oh,
so,
damn.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. I've actually taught, and I've broadcasted it live at a university in Mumbai.
Have you?
Yeah, yeah, dude, I got a pretty decent fan
You're
base in India, man. India after
you're
U.S. and
legit.
Canada, U.S., Canada, and then India is like those are my top three markets. And then there's like distant fourth. I think it's Mexico or it might be UK, but India's top three, and it's pushing to be. It's moving Canada out of the way soon.
Well, they really need to sign up for the course that you teach and Site
Yeah, but they
Owners
have their
Academy.
own courses. They have their own courses.
Yeah, but
Like,
that's if they want to come to the US.
yeah, I know. Like, yes, the market in India, you've got what I love, and I told them this in front of the class. The professor, I'm not sure if they liked it or not, but I don't care. I said I respect the hell out of the entrepreneurial spirit in India. You guys are ultimate hustlers, ultimate go-getters, and hustler in the good sense, not like
Yeah.
con artist sense, but like you guys go out and do whatever needs to get done. It's not about this let me find myself bullshit, you know, or let me find a rock to crawl under because I don't like the results of some political, bullshit. It's I'm out here. There's a billion of us, and we need to go do something. We need to differentiate ourselves. I love that spirit. I think it brings out the best in people. Could bring out the worst if when it's not unchecked properly, but that's where you step in, you regulators. But yeah, man, I love the entrepreneurial spirit in India. I actually think we need more of that here.
I think it's an immigrant spirit, honestly. I feel like
I'm very
it's not
pro
unique to
immigrant.
India.
I'm like the most. I'm an immigrant myself. So like I
I
love
thought you're
the
first generation.
No, I'm born in Romania.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we moved here when I was 3. My parents were the immigrants.
Well, I think Trump's going to deport you.
That's a soft spot for me, man, because yeah, look, when I voted, I put I voted women's rights, like I voted for allowing abortion in my state.
So
I
you're not a fan of Your Body, My Choice? Is that the guy who did that? And he
no,
got doxxed.
I am a fan of my body, my choice.
No, not My Body, My Choice. It's Your Body, My Choice.
Oh
That's what one of
yeah,
those jackasses said.
correct. I'm not a fan. I Yes. Now, I'm personally opposed to abortion. My wife
Yeah.
is in her third trimester now. I couldn't imagine.
Has it been third
Yeah,
trimester already?
yeah, man.
Wow.
But I recognize, like, who's anyone to tell a woman what they can do? Like, so I voted
Yeah,
against that. I voted
I understand that.
or I voted for that. I voted for like very loose, like pro immigrant, like um even though I agree with most of the laws, like we do need tighter border security, but I voted against it because they snuck in some stuff I didn't like, where it's like going to get a lot of hardworking people in trouble. So I had to go against that. But yeah, but you know me, I'm anti-regulation for the most part, and I have a duality about my nature. Like, and there's nothing wrong with people. I vote. I don't vote for the people. I don't fall under the cult. I vote
You vote on
policies.
the issues.
I vote policies, man, and a big macro one for me is like easy on the regulations. Like I think we've overdone it, and when the pendulum swings again, I'm happy to vote other side as well. I've done it before and I'll do it again. But people are freaking out, bro. People are freaking out about the results.
I think people are freaking out. I think that there's good reason to freak out because we don't know what to expect. So with a career politician, you kind of know whether it's Bernie or whether it's Ted Cruz or whether it's someone
Yeah.
else. You kind of have an idea of what you're walking into.
Yep.
With Trump, you literally get a fresh slate every single time because
But we
Trump's
see
style
what
is promise the world.
but we see his style from 4 years ago, or when was it?
But
eight
you only
years
saw
ago.
4 years of it. I would say that if you had a person who had only done 4 years of anything, like you just haven't developed enough.
especially when that last year was heavily disrupted by the pandemic, which is a black swan event.
We
What do you
already
think
have
of
comment.
Elon and Vivek will do with the FDA? This is the topic because LinkedIn user identify yourself.
Dr. Mac.
Oh, is it? Ah,
It says so.
I didn't see that last part. The title of this is "Uh-oh, what's going to happen to the FDA?" And I don't know. I mean, there's a lot
I,
of positives. There's M&A is going to go crazy. Biotechs,
Mhm.
I own a few, going crazy, like to the
Mhm.
moon. So the environment's going to be conducive towards investing again and putting capital to work. And the argument of private industry being able to more efficiently deploy capital versus government is undisputable, in my opinion.
I agree with you on that front. I think that I'm not sure Elon, for example, is qualified to talk about what should be taken away. Vivek actually has more qualifications in the
Vivek
biotech
is
industry.
yeah, Vivek is work
Um,
has been successful in the biotech space.
I know people who've been successful that don't know what's going on. So to me, that's not enough. What? Oh, Stephanie. Hi, Dan. Stephanie. I
Stephanie,
was in your
how's it
class.
going? Yes. No, of course. Didn't know my username as LinkedIn user here. Ah, Stephanie. Love the avatar too. Send me some chocolates.
So I think there are a couple of things that biotech companies are going to be have to be worried about. Number one, I think there's the fact that they're already talking about price caps. So RFK is not a fan of pricing. What I
Hmm.
don't think he fully understands is that the price of a drug is not determined by the drug company necessarily. The price of the drug is determined by what the insurer is willing to pay for it, and the insurers are looking for a discount, so PBMs. PBMs will say we want to keep your drug. We need a massive discount to show to our people, which means that you have to charge more just so you can show a bigger discount. Now the problem with that is it shows up for those people paying cash, and I'm one of those people every so often. It's a
Yeah,
nightmare.
me too.
Now you'd say, well, the solution to that is PBMs need to be brought under control. Except Ted Cruz came out, I want to say today or yesterday, and reached out to Lena Khan from the FTC and said, you need to stop doing everything you're doing. There's probably going to be a change in leadership at the FTC. You can't go down this path, which means that the PBMs are going to get some respite, which means that drug prices cannot fall solely on drug companies, except that's what's going to happen. That's going to be problematic, which means that the IRA you'll have issues with that. On the other
Every
hand, you also
three-letter
see
agency. Every three-letter
basically.
agency, which is every regulator,
Mhm.
and every organization such as the NIH that's
That was
closely
my next one.
tied. I mean, listen, if you work for one of these organizations, I would also be scared. Like,
Well, I think he's come out and said Bob Califf came up today and said he was worried about the FDA because he knows he'll probably not be in charge. He said we're in the middle of reorganization,
yep.
and we hope we have a chance to finish it, but I'm not sure I will. If I was a betting guy, I don't think he will. I think the other element that goes along with it. By the way, can you hear this or not so much?
Well, no, we can hear you.
Okay, there's like
What was
literally.
I heard myself?
Um, but okay, so the other thing I think they're looking at curtailing the NIH,
Yeah.
and I think that's going to be interesting.
And Trump made cuts last time to the NIH too.
The question really is, and I'm not an NIH expert, so I don't pretend to be, but they're trying to reduce it down to like 15 divisions, and I'm not completely sure I understand how the NIH works and why it works the way it does. I'm a fan of reducing the regulations, but I'm not a fan of reducing it because you can.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of reducing it because it makes sense.
The reason why I think, and again, if you work for one of these organizations, clearly your job is a huge question mark over it, right?
Yeah.
However, private industry since the 90s in research has been driving the majority of the workload. Like, I've never in my entire career received a penny from the NIH, any grant,
But
any.
you're not the audience. You're not the audience. I've done tons of NIH research with sites.
Yeah,
But they're doing it at the larger academic institutions.
correct.
So the big problem with NIH funding tends to be they're doing the basic research upon which a lot of the other research is built.
Right. Like a
As a result
biotech
of
can
that,
go look at the peer-reviewed paper and say, listen,
yeah,
let me talk to your tech transfer office at this AMC. I think we can do something with this product. We want
yeah.
to privatize it, and then they make a deal. I mean, yeah.
The problem with this is you'll end up in a scenario where you say NIH won't exist. No one's doing that basic research. If no one's doing that basic research, where do you get that next generation of funding? Bring the next generation of drugs out, which means that you don't have any clinical trials to base on something that a university is working.
What's more
And I
likely
think
to happen? That scenario? And because your opinion weighted way more than mine and others. This is why people have been waiting patiently to get you on. Uh, that scenario of like no one does this early research, or somehow another entity steps up, maybe a private public partnership, and the research still comes out.
so. Here's the thing: it's not to say no one does it. The amount will reduce. So private industry will continue to do it, but the amount of it will reduce, right? Because a lot of it was initially funded by the government. Then you pay the government for doing the research. So people come out and say, "Oh, the government is paying for the research, so it's all pharma's charging too much money for government-funded research." And I go, "That's not how that works. The government funds it, and then private industry pays for the research." So to me, that's not. You still need someone to go to take 50 bets so you can identify the 5 bets that work. But if no one takes those 50 bets, you're only going to have the 5 to start from, and that's going to potentially increase the cost of drugs, and you have higher failure rates and just a longer time to get to market and a fewer list of choice of drugs to get there.
But at the same time, what's happening is AI specifically
Yeah.
is making it easier to pre-identify certain IP, right?
But here's the problem with AI.
AlphaFold.
So two things. Two
Yeah.
things. AI, you can't patent what AI does. So you don't get the same controls.
But let's
Unless
say
you
AI identifies a small molecule, right? And this molecule, hey, it works on this pathway. It's agonist or whatever.
yeah, yeah.
You can patent that, right?
What what would you patent? Because who invented it? In the end, it comes down to what was invented and who invented it. So
Whoever
if
owns
AI
the AI,
invented it,
like AlphaFold is Google, right? Google owns that.
sure, but the idea is it a tool that's being used to help or a tool that's replacing a human? And right now we're talking about replacing humans, not
Right.
helping.
Right.
The moment you replace a human, you can't patent the same way. There are IP problems that go along with it.
I see. Yeah. So
So, and that's not just the US, that's across the world.
do you think the FDA, what's the word for this? Like the NIH, what would you call this? Like public funding, public funded research complex? Do you think
Sure.
it's works fine as is, or it needs some fixing?
I think there's a lot of waste there. I think that waste can be eliminated. I also think that there needs to be clarity on why the funding is being put out. And I think the processes as they exist tend to be overly bureaucratic. That can be reduced as well. I think the technology could be put in to streamline a lot of things. But having said all of that, wholesale, someone's going to come in. Like when I think about efficiency, I think about what Musk did, right? Where he said, "I don't think we need 2 backup server farms. I'm going to go in one day and cut off an entire server farm on the day before Christmas."
Yeah.
You try to do that, there's a lot of unexpected, unanticipated impact that we may not have considered. And I think that's what you've got to worry about and you have to be careful of. I think it's a little bit like putting fox in the hen hole and hoping that the best results come out. And I'm all for like efficiency, but find out how that efficiency is being achieved. And that's the regulatory process, right? You've got
Right.
to put things out for comment and go, what do you guys think? Is this a bad idea? And it's called a Part 15 hearing. And that stuff will take time to work itself through. Except in industry, that's not how we work. We make decisions, then deal with the consequences. up here dealing with lies. So
There's a. Did you see the other argument for the FDA regulatory shifts that are gonna happen? Um, if it leans towards less restrictive policies to encourage innovation, it could mean a faster path to market for certain drugs. However, if there's more scrutiny on certain therapeutic areas, which we know RFK is not the biggest fan of vaccines, to say the least.
yeah,
That's why I released this article the other day. Not all revenue is created equally. It's if you're a site that's been getting your bread buttered from vaccine trials, like you better learn a new skill, like a new
yeah.
avenue, a new capability. And same thing at the individual level. Like if all you know is how to navigate government bureaucracy, and that is over effectively, what's your actual skill set now, like in this new world? I think there's a lot of people afraid of this, and also because who wants to go look for a new job anyways, like.
So let's be clear. Part of my job as regulate is navigating government bureaucracy, right? And
Yeah.
I'm not particularly afraid. And the
Why?
reason I'm not afraid is there's just new bureaucracy I have to deal with. And again, people just build bureaucracy on bureaucracy. So I'm actually a fan of reducing bureaucracy. What I'm worried about is I think the two people who we're talking about in this case are Musk and Vivek. Vivek has been on the other side of the bureaucracy, right, where he thinks that his innovation is being stifled. And Musk is coming from a tech perspective. And tech works, and you see this in the medical device world just as much. Tech in general works with the idea of break things, fix them, move quickly, but keep breaking. The iterative breaking results in a better product. Except, how do we know things break in the pharma industry? People get hurt. And my concern is, if we move towards that iterative fixing model, we'll have more people get hurt in that process.
Right.
So that would be my initial concern. Um, Vivek, for
Yeah, that
example, I think
that part
when
we
I
got
think
to be careful with. But I don't think they're irresponsible. Elon, Vivek, RFK. I don't think they
I
have
mean,
any track record of.
let's look at what some of the stuff RFK is talking about, right? He's saying
Yeah,
vaccines. He's saying raw milk.
a
He's saying
fluoride in the
stem cell.
water.
Yeah, and fluoride in the water.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about fluoride in the water, so we'll keep that aside for a second. I assume there's tons of data, but I'm not an expert. I'm not going to try to position myself as one. But I do know, for example, raw milk. There's tons of data out there that says that raw milk can have its issues. So you need to have some controls in place for that. So if you say you just want to allow raw milk because I think that's a good idea, what makes you qualified to have that opinion? Outside
Right.
the fact that I read a couple of books. Well, you read a certain version of books without context. It's like when I try to tell you about how to run a clinical trial site, and you go, "That's great," and you go, "I know what you're telling me what the book version of something is. I actually run a site. I can tell you that's not
Right.
what reality looks like,"
Right. Right.
and that's what worries me for someone like RFK.
I think RFK
Um,
has the duality about him as well because, in my opinion, when he talks, because I'm actually a fan. Like, I probably would
sure,
have voted for him if he would have
sure.
if he would have remained independent guy, and that would have kept my streak of all the presidents I've ever voted for were independent or Green Party. I've never
Is that
voted for
true?
any party. Yeah, I've always voted for the Ralph
Is
Naders.
it Jill Stein? Who was running this time?
Last time was Jill Spike Jorgensen. I voted for her.
Okay.
I mean, I know there's no chance, but it was just more from a principles
Yeah,
perspective. Like I don't consider myself on either side of political spectrum really.
sure,
But RFK, I really liked him, even though he was the biggest threat to my business and my livelihood. I
sure.
think that our industry is sophisticated enough to survive even radical disruption. I think it's difficult, like you said. You can't just. It's not a tech thing where you can just break things and iterate. There's human
Yeah.
lives that are at stake. So I think he's coming from a place where he's seeing, and his enemy number one is really the food industry, sugar, high fructose corn syrup. I mean, he's gone. I think it's the F and the A of the FDA that he has a bigger problem with than the D, really. And
Well,
eh,
he's going after F. Well, the A is really just act, so I'm not sure what that means, but
Agriculture.
But the A is not agriculture.
Oh,
It's
isn't that?
Food, Drugs, and Cosmetics Act.
Oh no, I didn't know that. That was agriculture. Yeah,
No,
he's against that too. Atrazine. You know how they spray the crops, and
sure,
he's
pesticides. Yeah,
been very vocal. And in Europe, it's illegal. It's illegal
sure.
to sell products with atrazine. So
But are we? Here's my thing. Two different issues. Are we saying that we're just going to say Europe does it, so it must be right?
no, no, no,
Because,
no, definitely
but
not.
okay, so
Europe does a
let's assume
lot
you're right.
that's not right.
Right.
Trust me,
So,
Europe. I would not be a happy camper in Europe.
okay, so if we assume that Europe, just because Europe did
By the
something
way, do
doesn't
you
make
mind
it
if I
right.
eat while we do this?
Oh
My
no,
wife
no, no,
made
no.
me
Feel
some
free.
nice lox. Look at this, man. Lox,
Ooh,
omelet, olive, spinach,
I've never had a lox
cheese.
omelet. That sounds delicious.
Third trimester vibes, man. Whatever she's into, I get to partake too. But healthy, back to
Dude,
healthy food. Like very, very much opposed to the food industrial complex. And there is something there, man. There, like,
um, I think there's something in everything.
yeah.
I'm actually a fan of someone going, look, we need to reevaluate. I don't have an issue with reevaluating. I have an issue with I'm gunning for you. Because you should let the data bear itself out. And you need to be open minded about the data. Going, look, whatever the data says, I'm going to follow it. Now, the question is, who makes that evaluation? It needs to be someone qualified to make the evaluation. It can be RFK.
And who produces the studies? Because if you look at food studies, I've
Mhm.
actually done this with one of my investigators, Dr. Joe. He's
Sure.
got a Dr. Joe
Mhm.
show.
Uh-huh.
He says anything that comes out that's positive on, for example, he uses aspartame as an example.
Sure. Sure.
Anything that comes out says, yeah, aspartame's actually safe. If you look
Uh-huh.
at who funded the study, it's Diet Coke. It's like,
Okay, let's assume you're right. But wouldn't you say the same thing about drug studies?
yeah. And you need to have the food studies are different because you don't need sites. You don't need like there's another article I wrote about being responsible as a site, even though it's not legally required. It's your ethical duty, I believe, if you're a site owner, to not just choose whatever study you can get. You have to see if it does this make sense for my community. Does my PI's patients actually fit? Like, would
Yeah.
it actually benefit them, or is it causing harm? And a lot of that
Mhm.
gets into like the nuance of the patient burden and all those kind of things, which are not directly like dangerous, but they're not necessarily pro patient. Like, why would we give more patient burden to this person just because we're making money?
Well,
So I
that's what the
think there's
IRB should
a
be doing anyways, right?
correct. So in clinical trials, we at least have an ecosystem that's kind of
Yeah.
self-policing. Like, no, that's not okay. And like at SOS, we push back all the time against sponsors. It's not all right. In the food industry, it's very incestuous where you're not really necessarily having this. And if you're not on board, you're not getting the next opportunity. And they don't actually do
But
clinical trials. They're
But people argue
retrospective.
the same thing about the drug industry. Now, you and I work in the drug industry, and we go, it's not the way you think it is.
Yeah,
But the
yeah,
fact is that people make the same argument. People who are uninformed
right,
make that same argument.
right.
My point being, the food industry, a lot of the research has to be done, for example, inside inside like large academic institutions.
Correct.
You're not doing double-blinded studies. You're looking at safety for the most part. So it's a small list of people or rats or whatever it is that you're doing this
And
studies on.
long-term health outcomes, right? Like,
Correct.
let's look at the metabolic ramifications of aspartame,
Sure.
sucralose.
Yeah. But to me, what I hear you saying is we want to get that type of information, which is more regulation, not less regulation.
It's supposed to be. But I think people have to trust the regulators. And I think the crux of this issue is this revolving door of regulatory capture between private and
Okay.
police of our industry.
Uh huh.
You're thank you for being the working at the FDA so diligently.
Yeah.
Now you get a board seat with Pfizer for your good service. And the
So,
next one, same
that's
thing.
literally you're describing Scott Gottlieb when you say that.
There's like four of them that follow the
Oh no,
same
there.
pathway.
Sure. My point being, if you are that good that someone made you the head of the FDA, you were really that good when you're outside the FDA as well.
Right.
Wouldn't you, as the FDA, want someone who's that good? Otherwise, should you be led by someone who's not qualified?
Correct.
Like you
But
want an Elon Musk, you want well, not. I'm not sure if Vivek's at the same level, but you want an
no,
Elon
Vivek.
Musk leading technology. because
Yeah,
the dude
yeah,
actually knows technology. Like, I shouldn't be in charge of technology policing
right.
because I'm never going to understand the same way as Elon does.
But
But in the same way,
Elon's a unicorn. He can't necessarily be bought. Whereas,
well, my point's a different one. My point is
yeah,
actually you want people who are qualified. The price of qualification is they need to have the flexibility to do what they want because they will
yes,
otherwise say, I'm never going to take the job.
but it's also a two-way street. You don't want someone to start out as a regulator, work their way up the ranks. The argument is they're currying favor with private industry in order to one day be
No,
considered.
the argument is easy to understand. The
Yeah,
question is, how do you solve it? I think the
they're
fact is that
trying.
no, but I think by saying that you can't have a job with private industry, essentially that's slavery at that point, right? You're basically saying you can never quit. Is the government
Yeah,
going to pay for someone to not have a job for 2 years so that there's a gap? No, the government's never going to pay for that.
right.
So if that's true, um, who pays for their salary for a certain period of time? They're still got to make a living. So either you get people going one way where they're overqualified, which is why they got brought in, or now they're qualified and want to go out.
So what's the proper solution? Do you think this idea of regulatory capture has negative second and third order effects for the
Oh,
regular consumer?
absolutely. Oh, no. Let's be clear. Just because I'm saying that it's not as easily fixable, it doesn't mean that it does need to be fixed. I'm agreeing with you that it needs to be fixed. I just don't think it's as simple as, oh no, you can't go work for someone else.
Right.
Because
And I
that
don't
doesn't
think
work.
they're suggesting that, but I don't know what their plan is. They never really reveal
No,
it.
they've
So I
never.
think they're trying to
Yeah,
figure it out. I think initially it's going to be, you know how Musk did the X Files? Like when he bought X, he released all the insider stuff about
yeah.
everything being suppressed and only what they wanted to see got out. Okay. There's going to be something similar with all the three-letter agencies. Like what has been suppressed communication wise? Because there's this, gosh, I was just reading about this. The classifying something. So something is considered a matter of national security and it's not open to public viewing if you classify it as top secret or something. But
sure.
the default action now and all these three-letter agency SOP just put that as that's the default, no matter what it is. So ultimately, you're not getting exposure. You're not getting that transparency.
Reclassify
Correct.
information.
So nothing's really up for scrutiny because everything's kind of held in the dark.
Yeah.
And I think, and many others think, it's gone too far. And
And that might be fair, right? So that's totally fair to go. We need to reassess transparency, if you will, agency transparency. That's totally fair. I don't think that needs to be challenged. I think that's a fair point. Like, why do you need a default top secret if that's what really
but that's
happens?
where it starts because from there you can
Maybe.
discover, okay, well, what are some of the issues here? Let's look.
No, I
And then,
totally get that part. Yeah, I think it'll having someone look, and I'm not even sure this needs to be because if I read that correctly, they said this program that they're doing is only like a 1 year or 2 year program. That could be an office that exists for a while. I'm not sure it needs to
maybe,
be a one-off thing. I
yeah.
think Elon called it Doge,
Yeah,
Department of
Department of
something,
Government Expenditures?
efficiency,
Efficiency.
efficiency.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Not to
but
be confused with Dogecoin, which I own none
I
of.
think he did that on purpose
Of
because he's a
course.
big fan of Dogecoin. But yeah. But my point being, though I'm not sure it needed the mascot. I don't know if you saw his mascot that he put on. It's like a rat or something on there. Whatever. My point being, I think it's a good idea overall to have someone go, is this serving a function? If not, eliminate it. I'm a big fan of that. But
Yeah.
I want someone to look at it on a consistent basis
But not everyone's
and
a
not.
fan of it. If you're making your livelihood off of that, you're not a fan of changing it.
Actually, most people are making a livelihood on trying to get products to market. I mean, I'm talking to someone who literally makes a livelihood on it. And I'm going, I'd much rather spend my time helping someone get their product to market.
Yeah.
No one wants to be the police. What we want to be is helping people get things to market in a safer, effective way. For me to go, I found this esoteric law from 1856 that stops you from doing ABC. Okay, a huge portion of what I do is not just know that there's a law, but also which laws people are enforcing.
Mhm.
If I really wanted to like stop everything, there are like if you can find any issue and I can find something that supports shutting it down. Just
Yeah.
because I can find it doesn't mean that's effectively used. So to that point, things can be eliminated. Like maybe laws from 1857 that have nothing to do with like pure adulteration or something like that. Maybe those need to go out and that's clean and that's easy. So I'm agreeing with you is the point I'm making.
Yeah, I think we agree. I mean, so then RFK, when he speaks this way, I think a lot of it's to drive home a message because there's a delta between what he wants to do versus what can actually get done. Like
Right.
there's the power structure, the way our government works doesn't just allow them to do whatever they want. So people are freaking out about change, which is understandable. And if you work for a government entity, you shouldn't be relaxed right now. I mean, they're literally looking at slashing
I think
government
that's a good idea
officials.
too. See, here's my question for you, and
But
I'm
you're gonna piss
curious.
off a lot of people, man, because they don't.
No,
There's
I
a
don't.
lot of people that don't want more efficiency, and
I don't know if that's true.
they
I
argue
don't think
because
that's
it
true.
brings more safety. How could we possibly jeopardize patients' lives by
But you
slashing
shouldn't
costs?
be doing anything that does jeopardize patients' lives, right? We're talking about.
To begin
Um,
with, yeah, yeah.
I think you work with the do no harm philosophy, but now the question is, when are you doing harm, and what do we consider harm? And that needs to be assessed first. And I quite honestly, I'm not even necessarily opposed to something like the NICE methodology, which is in Europe. Do you know what NICE is? Okay,
Nice,
Europe, UK
Nice, a
specifically.
nice city in France.
No, I've been to Nice.
Yeah, me too.
Nice is different. NICE is, I forget what it stands for specifically, but it's essentially they decide whether the UK will pay for that specific drug. Last time I looked at it was like $45,000 or $50,000. You have to show value, otherwise it won't be paid for. I'm sure it's more than that. I'm not an
I
expert
see.
in reimbursement. My point being, someone needs to go in there and say, you know what, are we getting the value?
Hmm.
And however we measure that. So that's a fair argument to make. But I'm not sure just wholesale, oh, I'm making this up. We don't need phase 1 clinical trials because we'll see the effects in phase 2. No, I don't think that's a good idea. No, not that anyone's proposed that, but that would be a form of efficiency, but that puts lives in danger.
Okay, so we've discussed drug pricing pressure. We've
Yeah.
discussed potential FDA regulatory shifts. We've discussed
Yep.
transparency and PBM regulations.
Yep.
Um, M&A, I kind of brought it up. So
So let's discuss M&A.
yeah, because there's like 2 or 3 more things on this list. I'm prepared,
Yeah,
man. I'm actually, for once, I'm prepared because I'm out of
Look
my
at you.
element, man. This is not really my specialty, but I know it
You're
is
doing
you.
great.
This is your world, man.
This is 100% my world. I love this stuff.
We're just living in
As
it. This
always,
is
I'm
our
impressed with
Sean's
you.
world. We're just living in it. We're paying rent.
You know what? Reach out to me. I can give you a discount on the rent. But you talked about what was the last thing? M&A. So
Yeah.
my thing with M&A, overall, I think it's a good idea. Like you want the last thing that came out was the DOJ really cracking down on compliance. They really want to make sure compliance is there. They specifically called out clinical trial fraud. They specifically called out clinical research as an area that they're concentrating on. In 2023, they put out a whole new thing on here's how we want to ensure that people comply. OIG put out a whole compliance, and we've talked about this in the various podcasts before. OIG put out its own compliance plan. FDA put out its own compliance plan. I think that's going to be how we have to work together and sort of go cohesively. How is all this going to come together? That's part of what I do. You need to bring your ORI, OCR, FDA, DOJ, OIG, all their plans together and go, here's how we need to have a comprehensive compliance plan. If you're buying a product, if you're buying whether it's an asset purchase or a sale or a stock purchase or an equity sale, if you will, you need to know these elements. Great. Now, what are you going to eliminate in that efficiency process? Because in the end, those things all need to start flowing together, and you can't have these be disparate. I think M&A is going to probably do very well, but I think the ramifications of what we see won't be felt for another 5 to 7 years.
Oh yeah,
Oh
because
yeah, because
the
the
it's a
it's a
leading indicator for so M&A. The idea is I own a mid cap biotech. It's actually a small cap. It's gonna have a successful product. I'm not gonna name it because I don't want to be accused of pumping it, but I've talked about it before. It'll probably get PDUFA. They're
Hmm.
probably gonna start licensing or looking now because of the new regime M&A, and they'll probably get acquired at a higher multiple than before. And what's going to happen is the big pharma, whoever buys it, is going to integrate the core components of that company into their
Yeah,
infrastructure. If they have to, they're going to reduce any redundancies or just absorb them all. Depends on how efficient that company was, right? That's
you
the
can be
part,
absorbed. Yeah.
and that's the part where people are afraid because some of these biotechs that get acquired, there is redundancy, right? And there's also the fear of outsourcing, global outsourcing, which is another topic I want to discuss. So people are like at the individual level, not on the policy level, on the individual level, the people messaging you, the people messaging me, they're afraid. And it's not like they don't have reason. They're not being paranoid. They actually have. They're pretty
Absolutely.
rational about it. Like the writing's kind of on the wall, but the antidote is become resilient. Like the only
Yeah.
constant in life is constant change. There's no
Yeah.
other way.
Absolutely.
Just assume you
Absolutely.
will be laid off. No?
You're a fan of entrepreneurship, as am I. But the fact is that the world is not full of entrepreneurs. Some people just need stability in their
So what
lives.
can they do then? What's the plan for them?
I think
Prescription.
you develop more skills. So it's not just become an entrepreneur. It might be become indispensable. Because maybe in my world, maybe you go from being just the regulatory person to be the regulatory and the quality person. Maybe you go from being the regulatory and the quality person to actually being a CRA. Maybe you go from being a regulatory quality person or a CRA. I'm going to get more knowledge about IRBs. Whatever you're going to do, so you always have transferable skills that make you easier to move to the next spot.
Correct.
Um,
I
I
agree.
was, there was this one,
But you know why
and
people don't want to do that?
it's easy. It's people, including myself, are lazy. Why move and
People
why
are
change?
transactional. People are
Oh,
transactional.
interesting.
I'm
You
getting
think
paid for the most part, yeah. I'm getting paid to do this. Why
that's
would
where I start.
I why would I learn something else for free? And that's kind of where the clash is. Well, you're not doing it for
Interesting.
the company you're with, you're doing it for yourself. Okay, well, I don't
Yeah.
have time.
Okay.
And then that's where you kind of dissect and say, and you can do this one on one with just about everybody.
Yeah, I'm on a Facebook group involving a lot of like coordinators and stuff, and there was a post recently about I have a MBA, a MPH, and I'm thinking
Yeah,
about getting a PhD.
yeah,
Which of these will position me to become a director level person, like to position themselves better? I'm like, I don't think your degree is what's slowing you down. I think it's the fact that if you are, and he or she said that there was an anonymous poster. He or she came out and said that I have 20 years of experience doing this. Dude, with 20 years of experience, you should already be director. And the
right.
only reason you're not a director is probably because you haven't put yourself out there for it. So it's not a degree, it's you pushing yourself to be uncomfortable. And
Yes, yes. A lot of times it's also soft skills. Like, can you motivate people? Can you manage
right,
when somebody doesn't want to do something? Can you get them to do it?
yeah,
How many PhDs do you need for that to happen? You don't need any. You need
right,
experience dealing with people, influence,
right,
motivation,
yeah,
inspiration, like being a servant leader. I mean, how many of these people are willing to be a servant leader? Very few.
yeah. Here's my question though. I'm trying to not divert away from the
And this
topic.
goes back to India. I love the entrepreneurial spirit there. And if you brought this up to that classroom that I was teaching, they would think it's ridiculous. Like, And they value education there too, but they would be like, "Oh, so there's another way I can do it? Okay, well, let me learn more. How?"
Yeah. Yeah. I really want to teach a class here. I think that'd be fun the next time I come down to aim for that.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, in
uh,
person too. I did mine on Zoom.
yeah, I think that it's going to be interesting. I think there's another topic you raised, and this is actually going to show up already. I think Biden's already started this, but I have a feeling Trump's just going to accelerate it, which is because you mentioned India, I'm going to switch it to China. Um,
That's on my list, man. And we talked about it.
we
Supply
did.
chain with the Biosecure Act and Trump's tough
Pull
stance
the
on
words right
China.
out of my mouth. Look at you.
There could be
Um,
restrictions on working with foreign companies, especially in drug manufacturing. Many
yep.
CROs and CDMOs rely on
Yep.
international partnerships and imported materials. Tariffs could raise the cost of active pharmaceutical ingredients, as well as increasing the overall cost of conducting studies in the US.
Well, first of all, I think we need to acknowledge Alicia.
Alicia, whoa, Alicia's gonna come to Yuma. She's gonna come after SOS. She said we got a
Well,
VIP ticket for Alicia at Yuma Clinical Trials. We're turning Yuma, Arizona into Disneyland.
why Disneyland?
It's the happiest place in research.
Well, hey, you get to meet Dan Safair. That's a ride all by itself. And Helen is
Funny you
commenting on
mentioned
the
that
Facebook
Facebook
post.
post. I thought the same thing. You get a PhD for yourself, not to go up the ladder. And this is somebody that's doing this as we speak. So I've interviewed
Yeah,
Helen on the show. Yes, but people are very transactional, especially if they're going to go in debt to get a degree. And they ignore the lower hanging fruit, but it's like harder to pick because no one's telling you to do it and no one's paying you any extra to do it and you're going to fail. And why would anyone in their right mind want to do that when they have plenty of work in their current job and they feel like
yeah.
they're already overwhelmed there? So
Here's
the cream rises to the top.
here's my funny thing, and this is speaking to Helen's point and speaking to your point. I have 6 degrees. I can assure you, I put only two. I think I put only two on my resume, maybe three. And then
Wow.
the reason you do that is because at some point no one gives a crap, and they shouldn't.
Right.
Um, the fact is that what most people care about is, can you fix my problem?
Yes.
And if you can, great. If not, get out of the way because I'm not paying you for that.
Janet Jackson's hit verse in the 90s, "What have you done for me lately?"
Oh, is that true? I didn't know that actually. I'm not a singing person. I'm not a music person. I'm much more of a movie and TV show person,
Isn't one of your
except for
degrees
sports.
in PhD in song and dance?
Actually, that's not counting with certificates. I have a bunch of certificates, including I have a certificate in riding elephants when I went through
Wow.
Laos.
Amazing, man. That should be on your
Right?
resume.
It's a great conversation point. But no, I think the point is going back to China.
Yep.
The
Tariff.
point to China is going to land up being. I think that what we learned from COVID is that having a very diverse supply chain is great as a concept, but with China competing with the US, we can't be so dependent on any one country that drugs themselves become unavailable.
Exactly.
And I think that, quite honestly, staying here, staying in India, you get a version of it where India thinks it's going to be the net beneficiary of it, and
Yep.
chances are India probably will be the net beneficiary. And the reason is because they have a larger population that's just as qualified, English speaking, etc. But even there, I expect that the U.S. government will probably go, yes, but I'm not taking chances anymore. I'm not going to outsource everything because I need to have access to my drugs.
So isn't that good? I know the cost of everything is going to skyrocket, but they're on that trajectory anyways, even without doing this because of inflation and long-term
I mean, the
yields
cost of
being long-term yields being less than short-term yields. Like ultimately, inflation. Look what the Fed is doing. The Fed's lowering rates half basis point, another quarter basis point. Yet the mortgages are not going down. That's
yeah,
not
I'm
the
noticing
intended
that.
effect. That's not the intended effect because the mortgage banks, that's the overnight lending to the banks. That's the real economy, not what the Fed thinks they can do and they can manipulate. And again, another example of an inefficient three-letter quasi organization that became
Well, I think
powerful.
Trump wants direct control of that, right?
And that's why Bitcoin's soaring. Yeah, I mean that's another topic. But point is, prices of everything going up anyways, even if we don't become independent from China and other countries on supply chain for drugs, which is something I think
Yeah.
we can all agree is very important,
Yeah.
right?
I 100% agree. The question then becomes, how does it play itself out? And um, I think the other problem that the FDA faces is, how do you manage a global supply chain? On the other hand, I think that U.S. industries will have a harder time because I think that you'll
You think
have
the
a hard.
investment will come in? The investments need, because of these rates are the investment.
I love your dog. Can you say hello to him, please?
Bodie wants some. This is the one that almost never is seen on camera. This is rare.
Oh,
He sees the
can
food.
we? Oh,
This
can
is
he
my
have
American
some?
Bulldog. Yeah, he can have some. Not the
We can't
tomatoes.
see him properly. Just to be clear,
Bodie,
he's
come here.
blocked.
Come here. Come here. Ah, good puppy. Good puppy. This guy scares everybody. He's the sweetest dog, but he looks
He's
terrifying.
super cute.
And he's fast. 120 pounds of pure muscle.
He's 120 pounds.
Yeah,
He's a
he's
big boy.
built. These American Bulldogs, something
He looks
else.
like a sweet boy.
But yeah, he's very serious right now because I'm eating. Uh,
He's focused.
Private
Um,
investment. Private investment. This country is founded on private investment,
sure.
efficient use of capital. The private
Mhm.
markets know how to allocate capital much more efficiently than governments. So I think
Sure.
the crux of this entire argument is government's wasting too much. We can
Okay.
get better returns on the same capital from private industry, and we give incentives to the capitalists. And then this gets twisted into like fascism, which I don't understand how
I
that
don't
is.
get the fascism part, but my issue is a slightly different argument. I think the government does not give you good returns. However, the government does not act in self-interest. However, private industry does. And
But
that
the government's not
self-interest,
supposed to act in self-interest.
what is the self-interest that government would have outside national security or the like?
Some of the stuff we discussed, because the government by itself, of course, but the individuals within it.
Sure, but I guess what I'm really talking about is, if you say, for example, we want drugs to be developed in the U.S. and that's
Yeah.
the law that comes out, or we want drugs to, like, whatever we position that as, industry will decide, well, what is the cost of doing that, and maybe it's cheap, and maybe I have a plant in China that makes all those drugs and it supplies all of Southeast Asia for me and maybe parts of Europe for me. So yes, the sales in the US would be affected, but my global sales would be affected the other way. And I'll take the hit and won't sell in the US. Hugely problematic for the US. And this is what I mean by law of unintended consequences.
Do you think
We
that's
don't know.
a do you think that's a probable outcome, or
I'd say it's improbable in most cases, but in some cases, I'm sure someone does that differential and comes back with, yeah, it's not worth it.
I
In
see?
fact, we see that all day, every day with generic drugs,
Hmm.
because with generic drugs, the cost of producing those drugs is a lot cheaper across the world. So if you want to get a drug made for the ex-US population, they'll just make it there and they'll sell it there. So if we
Yeah.
suddenly start saying you need another facility in the U.S., in North Carolina, in Boston, good. I'm not doing it. And we're going to start seeing more drug shortages. Is that really what we want?
So more medical tourism then becoming
Now
a
that
thing.
could be see, that's the thing no one's talking enough about. Um,
I'm on the
Medical
border.
tourism.
Like I go to Mexico for all kinds of stuff, man. PRP we've discussed before.
Yeah.
Platelet rich plasma.
TRT.
Nah, I do that in the U.S.
Are you going for HRT as well?
I dabble. I mean, I experiment on myself a lot, man, more than I
Yeah.
should, quite honestly. But and I don't post very much about it. Once in a while, I do. But yeah, it's way cheaper in Mexico, for
Yeah.
example. But you also
Yeah.
don't know what you're getting because there a lot of the stuff is from China there, and even for
Mhm.
the dogs, right? We buy meds for the dogs, and the vet here
Mhm.
says, "Hey, be careful. You know they get a lot of their stuff from China. It might say Abbott on the bottle, but you
Yeah.
might find like one character on the back if you look closely that's like Chinese."
Yeah.
But it works for them. I mean, it works
Yeah,
in Mexico.
yeah. And sometimes
People are
people go,
worried that
my
the
choices aren't.
corruption.
So I'll give you an example right now. Like I have to get an MRI done. The cost of doing that MRI in the US, I already checked the price. It's about $2,600.
Yeah.
Or I can do it in India for about 200.
So
Guess
I
which one
think,
I'm choosing?
of course, and I think that's the whole point of this regime change, at least
Yeah.
in principle. And I think that's why a lot of people voted. By the way, people need to look in the mirror. I'm not very political at all. It's hard not to be these days. To blame other people for your results,
Mhm.
like you are the problem at that point. It's
In many cases.
look in the mirror. Now, can't everybody be racist or misogynist? That's just
Sure.
now. Is there a large cohort of that party that is? Yes. Is
Sure.
it everybody? No, that's insulting.
I agree with that statement. Absolutely.
The I think the thesis of this team is let's reduce inefficiency. We're gonna suffer a little in the short term, but we're gonna do it. No one wants to do this because all they want to do is get reelected. We're
Yeah.
gonna do it, and then hopefully in 5, 10 years we come out better than if we would have kept going down the same pathway. And
The
we got to
question is,
figure out how to make
how would it work in
Americans.
10 years? You're assuming that whoever comes on will look like Trump?
Yeah. Well, I
Because
think if they
Trump can't run.
no, I know, but the people in place there, they're positioned themselves smarter than the other side. They have a plan. It looks like at least the next 12 years is they've got the plan for it.
You think?
JD and then Vivek after.
See, I'm not convinced that they are in plan.
Everything's in the air, but that like the pundits would tell you that's the plan. The Dems have zero plan at this. Like
Whoever
they're in
LinkedIn
complete
user
chaos.
is, you want to
LinkedIn
mention?
user, identify yourself.
I would happily take that. I looked up my price. I actually called. I literally looked it up. It was 24 something dollars,
Listen,
$2,400 or something.
you know want to
So
know what's crazy? I pay. We've gotten into this before on the pod. You tell me be careful. I know. Okay, forget that for now. We get the bills for some patients for their assessments that we need, right? Like
yeah,
ultrasound of the abdomen or a CT scan of the abdomen. All right, we're cash, right? Send us the bill. We're good.
yeah.
We get the bill from the private enterprise that does it. They're a big health system. Here's the bill. It's like $3,000 something. I'm like, what is this? And then they say, but if you click it and pay it all cash now, it's only 600.
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
that's the bill they send to insurance companies and
Yeah.
government.
See, in my case, I hadn't
So
hit my deductible. I think that's part of it.
not all revenue is created equally, and that's where everyone's got
Correct.
their hands and say,
Yep.
"Let me get
Yep.
from here because this is taxpayer money; it's juicy." Whereas
Yeah.
when Darshan or Dan pays it on cash, okay, I'm gonna cut them a break. So the
Yeah.
costs are inflated
They are.
because they can get the money, not because that's what it costs.
Correct. 100%. I think Dr. Mack's right about that. I think to the point both you and Dr. Mack are making, just to be clear, I don't think that's the cost of the actual process. However, in my case, that's what the insurance company told me I'd have to pay because I have not hit my deductible. No cash, no health insurance, use your HSA. Yeah, if someone said $500, that'd be a lot easier. But I'd have to figure out what that process looks like, and I'm not necessarily opposed to it. But I'll probably end up doing that here because I'm already here.
Alan says, "I hope you're right," but I don't think so. I mean, and if I'm not right, like let's say the alternative would have happened where we would have got like 4 more years of what's going on. Would that have been better than the worst possible outcome here? No, because you needed to do something anyways to change. The inefficiencies are too big.
I see. My problem with again, I have problems with both candidates. Let's be clear. But my problem with Kamala is I don't know what she stands for. My problem with Trump also is I have a symptom of what he stands for. I don't have clarity of what he stands for. In both cases, I don't know what we would have gotten and what we will get.
Right.
So,
But regardless of who, change was needed.
you think?
Inflation's out of control.
I think
Going to
inflation's reduced.
McDonald's.
No, inflation's already down.
So going to McDonald's and the grocery store will tell you otherwise.
No. So what you're talking about is the current price. Inflation is the increase in price.
The
So the
increase in
question
price,
is
yeah.
it increasing now? Not whether it was increasing at a certain point. I'm agreeing with you. I think
Yeah.
inflation was crazy. But the
Inflation was
question is
crazy.
that
The debt, the what's it called? The when the long-term interest rates are shorter than the short-term inversion, uh, the yield curve being inverted, right?
yeah,
Like
I'm not smart enough for that.
long
I
term,
believe you.
long
Yeah.
term, the indicator is showing it's not good.
Oh,
Long
is that
term,
true? I didn't know
very
that. Okay.
bad. Everything headed very bad. Like
I didn't know that. Okay.
gallon
I
of
believe.
milk went just a few years ago. You go to McDonald's, it's like cheap, right? This was
Yeah.
part of the obesity issue. Like
Right.
the to eat well is expensive, so everyone gets McDonald's and Jack is cheap.
Yeah.
It's no longer cheap, man. It's considered like a luxury
Yeah.
now.
That's fair.
I mean, I
No, I
can
know. I
afford it.
agree with
You
you.
and I can afford it, but
No, I agree.
regular working people, I don't know how they do it. It's
I
Starbucks too.
genuinely agree.
$7 for a freaking nitro cold brew, man. The MAs at the office come in every day with a Starbucks. I'm like, that's like one third. That's like half of your hourly pay on.
To be clear, they're doing all those TikTok dances with you. They need that nitro brew.
Not my staff. We pay them better than that. These are the doctors that hire their MAs. We
Got
can't hire them all, man. Now, if I got an
it.
NIH grant, perhaps.
Exactly. Well, get it
But
while the gang's good.
They ain't playing with me, man. They're playing with the insiders. I'm not an insider. I'm an outsider.
Oh, not if you hang out with Musk or Vivek, right? You
Yeah,
might
I don't
become an
hang out.
insider.
I don't hang out with them.
By the way, thank you, Dr. Mac. I appreciate
Dr.
that. I
Mac,
might reach out to him.
call the standalone image center and ask how much it is. Yeah, exactly. I learned this the hard way too. We
I
do
just
it.
learned
I
something.
learned because of the research clinic. Research
Yeah.
clinic, you have no insurance. Okay, well let's pay cash. Me personally, I go in. Oh, let's run your deductible for. Then they still bill the
Right.
insurance. Okay, and now you got to do this, so they double end it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So here's what I know. Do we need to do a second video on this?
of course, man. This is just starting. He's not even
Yeah.
inaugurated. Then RFK has to be what's it called, where they approve his as a nomination, and we don't even know what he's going to be nominated as. Do we?
I think that'll be interesting. I don't. Someone said he might become health czar and not head of HHS. I don't know what the hell that means, but
Yeah, I don't know. But if people are worried, you shouldn't be. Like, I think you shouldn't buy into the false sense of security that you've got a comfortable job that's going to be there forever. Things ultimately, the bill comes due,
yeah,
and in a capitalist society, the most efficient use of the funds eventually is the strategy. Eventually,
I agree with that. Yeah.
and how far you can string it along is based on these election cycles we have, and people have said they're fed up with it. Eventually is now.
Question I wonder is what happens to the insurance companies right now because they were really PBMs were really under the eye
Yeah,
of.
man, and we were talking about that before the election, really. Like,
Yeah, but now will they go? You know what? We've got bigger fish to fry, or will they go? Drug costs are a major problem, and PBMs are still under scrutiny. So I
yeah,
don't
I
know.
don't know. You're more qualified
No,
to
so
answer that.
to me, PBM, it comes down to whether the FTC is going to be able to enforce its concerns.
And we don't
Um,
know because they might get like half of that FTC might
exactly,
get slashed.
exactly right, exactly right. So we'll see
And
how that
that's
plays itself out.
with Congress likely to support transparency measures, clinical trials might face increased reporting and compliance requirements around drug pricing and PBMs. This could add
I don't see
administrative
clinical
burden.
trials being affected the same way.
I don't either. I think they're referring to AMC research.
You know what I think will really happen? I think that you'll probably see a requirement for more adaptive studies. So the whole phase one, phase two, phase three becomes like this spectrum, if you will. And you need to plan the whole thing out up front. And you can have checkpoints, if you will, but it'll just create a more streamlined process. But the result of the streamlined process is that once you're in, you're in. And I
Mhm.
think that could be very expensive. But once you're in, you come out cleaner.
Yeah, and I imagine we'll be doing a lot more of these
I think the
weekly live.
vaccine one is concerning, Helen. I agree.
Helen, if RFK has anything to do with healthcare, we should be worried, especially with the stand on vaccines. And if you talk, the craziest part is if you talk to, let's say, 10 physicians, right? I'm around physicians all the time. I
Right.
talk to some that are part of large health centers, some that are part of AMCs, some that are private practice. And you ask them about just regular vaccines for like a kid, because I'm about to be in that place. You'll get 10 different opinions, ranging from don't get any to get all of them
You
to
are
you
talking to
only
some
need this,
weird
this, and this.
pediatricians. I've never known a pediatrician who said, don't get any, or just get
No,
some.
not. I'm not talking to 10 pediatricians, 10 doctors,
Oh,
just across the board. And I'm talking more than that, but it's for the sake of the
sure, sure,
argument.
sure. Illustrative purposes. But no,
But
even then,
there's no consensus, man. There is zero
I think there
consensus.
is, though. I disagree with you on that one. I think there's pretty good consensus on vaccines.
I
So
hope
yeah,
so,
I'd
but
be
this
curious.
regime
Yeah.
says there's not.
Well, RFK says there's not, which is
Yeah.
different.
Well,
So
he's representing the regime.
that's fair.
And who knows?
But yeah,
My
let's see how
answer
this
is
plays
I
out.
don't know. I don't know the answer, man. Like
I feel you.
I'm always questioning. I'm always skeptical.
I think skeptical is good, but skeptical after the data's come in. Like, I think
Right.
maybe there's an argument for show me the data.
Yeah. Yeah. We've had Dr. Hazen on. She's had her opinions. We've had many doctors on. This is why I almost got kicked off of YouTube. Having having a variation of opinions. Alan says I've never known 10 docs who have differing opinions. I do. It's because I picked them from different places. They're not all in the same AMC or the same healthcare system.
Right.
And I think once you start getting outside of the cluster
Mm-hmm.
and you start going out, let's just truly get random from different health organizations, you'll get differing opinions. And they're
Yeah.
not, one is not dumber than the other. It's just trusting the data versus
But the
believing.
question is, have they looked at the data? If any doctor is really questioning vaccines, I want to know, why do you not trust the data? Not just I don't trust the data.
Yeah,
Because
I
I
agree.
think you have a
I agree.
higher burden at that point. Because someone has looked at the data and said it works.
I
So for
agree.
you to come in and say, I don't, what data do you have that they didn't have?
Agree. And when you get into those kind of discussions, which I have,
Mm-hmm.
there are certain vaccines that are more necessary than others. And at some point becomes a spectrum of like on the flu, okay, well, it's debatable. They're going to push it, but it's debatable. So you eventually get past the absolutely required
Mm-hmm.
to
Sure.
jury's still out, and then it continues. And that's the part I think RFK has issues with, unless he has issues with all of them, which is fair enough if he does. But I think that's the real analysis under the hood, like the nuanced version.
I agree. I agree with that statement.
That's complicated. I mean, who are we? I work in this industry, and I've got
No,
questions.
I think there's a difference, right? I think with all due respect, I think there are people who are more qualified than other people. Um,
Absolutely. I'm not. This is why I rarely talk about it unless I have an expert on or someone with an interesting
sure.
opinion that is qualified, right?
Yeah.
But you know what gets to that? Not so sure. That people don't like to hear.
What about it?
COVID vaccine.
What about it? You're saying
Should you get it or not?
questionable is that your position?
Kids, pregnant women, regular people, healthy people. I mean, it starts getting, and then now you're messing with purse strings, and this is why I almost got
No,
banned.
see, I have multiple opinions on this, and the opinion really all lands up with there's enough data for it. My biggest issue with the COVID vaccine would land up being the data is all there. If people, and I think people can go, I need more information. I think maybe the argument is exactly what Helen is saying, which is maybe we
Yeah.
need to make some of that data more accessible. I think the solution is not we need to question the vaccine.
Mm.
But the solution is we need to have more transparency of data. And to that effect, I think Europe does a really good job where they say, we want any new product coming out, we want the raw data to be available. We want the actual, primarily, mostly, almost exclusively unredacted data to be available. And you can see that data.
Mhm.
So if someone goes, I don't believe you, well, here's the data. So
Yeah.
instead of saying, and that's an easy fix. In fact, FDA should be moving towards that anyways.
There's always going to be people distrusting, like we discussed, where
Great.
like you and I work in the industry, we know it's not that easy. Matter of fact, this is the stupidest thing. The reason I almost got banned from YouTube, you would think, okay, I had
Well,
Dr.
I'm sure
McCullough
someone's going to
on.
help you. Yeah.
No, I had Dr. McCullough on. Okay, I understand. remember during the height of COVID, or right after, there was this Pfizer whistleblower. She was like this disgruntled coordinator that got fired. And then she went and said, everything at the site was fraudulent. You can't trust any of the data. And then I think it was the BMS or the British Medical Journal or something like
Sure.
this,
BMJ.
gave her the spotlight, and it made people question vaccines. And I did an hour-long reaction to it where I defended the vaccine. I said, listen, what they're showing you on the screen is that queries. These are not like the SUSAR. These are the queries. I can show you my EDC right now on a non-vaccine study. We've got tons of queries. So this is sensationalism. But that's because I'm
Yeah.
an insider, I know. And somehow YouTube thought I was disinformation. So they
Right.
gave me a strike. So there is a lot of that, and that's where the distrust stems, because the majority of people don't work in clinical research. But
Yeah.
occasionally there are, and RFK might have a point or two here and there, and maybe not about vaccines, but about the
I think everything
foods.
should be worth scrutinizing, right? I'm a
Yeah,
big fan of
yeah,
everything worth scrutinizing, but I think you got to pick your battles.
yeah,
And I think there's some stuff that's settled science, and some stuff that is not settled science, and some stuff that's settled science one way or the other. And then there's stuff where it's a judgment call.
yeah.
There's nothing I know that suggests that vaccines is a judgment call right now. To Helen's point, by the way, she raises this question. There's a huge push for plain language summaries. I absolutely agree, Helen. Again, Europe requires plain language summaries. You can get that from most
Right.
data out there. The US is kind of creating its own sort of little bullets, if you will, that you can get for a lot of drugs. But if you want the actual study plain language summaries, Europe's probably got the best. UDRCT gives you a lot of that data right now, which is really awesome.
Okay.
But
I think people just need to get more informed, and these are
yeah,
not simple, my camp said this, so this is what I should believe, and everyone else is
we
an
shouldn't be in
idiot.
camps at all. I think we should be in freaking, like, as you put it, like, you study the issue.
I agree,
Forget
but
camps. Yeah.
that's idealistic. Everyone right now is, my side says this, and everyone else is an idiot.
All right.
And none of this nuanced. This is where everything is, like, all the answers are here in the nuance.
Yeah. 3 hour conversations at Joe Rogan's. That's really what everyone wants.
If you don't get banned, yeah.
All right, if not, you go for the hour and 12-minute long conversation with Dan Safara.
Man, Darshan, we got a lot of more conversations to have,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
as the new regime takes over and we start actually seeing what they do, we'll be critical when we need to, or we'll give our opinions when we need to, and you and I might differ, and I might
Oh, and
bring
that's
on
okay.
other people who, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. This
What
is
we
what.
need is Dr. Goldman.
Yeah, I'll let him speak for himself.
Exactly right. But
Anything else, man? You got anything to plug or push, or you got a new
no,
vaccine you're
my plug
pushing,
and push
or
is. Well, I have one thing to plug. Aren't we doing the little site
thank
training?
you. Side Owner Academy Monday is the first class that I'm teaching. Hopefully you can join.
I'll try.
Yeah, I'll try to. But yeah, and then we have 5 weeks. It's a 5 week Side Owner Academy, and myself, Darshan, Chris Auber, Monica Quitiva, Judy Galindo, Ashley Margot are running it, and Dr. Al Jazirli, who's a PI oncologist who I've had on this topic as well. Oh, before RFK brought up other things that I think are interesting. He's pro psychedelics.
He is.
So there's going to be a huge push for that kind of research. Peptides.
Well, psychedelics, you know that the last version got thrown out, right? It did not get approved.
And there's a lot of upset people around that, and they think it's
I know.
unfair. They think
I
it's
know.
directly related to regulatory capture,
If
which
here's the
further
thing,
feeds
if you
into
don't like the answer, yeah, exactly.
I know,
Yeah,
but it's people, and that's not just fringe people. There's
yeah.
a lot of people that feel this way.
I know. I know some of those people. I know people who are very, very smart, who kind of go, it got a raw deal. I'm not necessarily sure I agree because I tend to believe, like, I tend to generally believe the FDA because they really do work with the best interest at heart
Yeah.
of the American people.
Uh,
There are obviously, it's not 100% situation, but if I was I would defer to them more often than not. But
I will hold my opinion on this because
fair
I have a
enough.
site. I have a site.
Wonderful. But we're gonna do this again,
Good.
and we're gonna have we didn't get a chance to talk. This is gonna end up being a separate conversation. But Esai and that fraud situation we were talking about from like 2 weeks ago.
Man, reporters from New York Times in my inbox. I'm not answering them, dude. I don't want to contribute to more sensationalism. Like
Oh, we're
they
gonna have
let
more
them
of
find
these.
the stories from other people. I've worked
Yeah,
not on that study, but I worked with Esai around that time on an
yeah.
Aricept study. But it was
Interesting.
a observation. It was a phase 4. It was one of my first studies I ever worked on. And yeah, there was nothing like this. I mean, it was open label. We gave Aricept to anyone who needed it. Yeah, what they've been accused of is, yeah, I mean, it's the ugly side of our industry, and some more nuance that
I didn't read the details, so I don't know much about that one. I'd have to bone up before we talk. Interesting comment from Helen, but I actually disagree. Psychedelics are less FDA and more DEA. It's both. I think FDA will go into the regulatory safety efficacy. DEA goes to addictive potential.
addictive. Yeah,
Now the
that
question is fair argument: can DEA be combined? I think there's a good argument there.
well
DEA will say no.
with this regime, anything's possible.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I guess it's like
And that goes
a.
to the efficiency.
Mhm. So, less closing thoughts for people that are, dude. Just be honest, man. People are messaging you like hysterical.
I, I I get people messaging me going, it's going to be hugely problematic, and I'm one of those people who goes, let's give it a chance. Let's see what happens. Why scare anyone? Someone sent me a link for the Eastside story for Helen, by the way. So if someone wants to post
Uh, Helen on Brad's feed, just go back to last week. You'll find it. Just click on all Brad's post and go back to last week. That's where I got it from. So, do
hard
you
to
think
run clinical trials through if DEA doesn't remove the Schedule One. I think that's
that's
part of the
true?
rescheduling process. So,
That's true.
I mean, people do marijuana studies all the time right now,
I had a
and
sleep
still schedule on
apnea.
Schedule One.
I had a sleep apnea study that I was real excited for. Then the CRO said, "Do you have a schedule 1 through 4?" I said, "No, we have a 2 through 4." And
Yeah,
it was silence for like 2 weeks. And just yesterday, they revised their question and say, "Do you have a schedule 2 through 4 DA?" So yeah, this is a issue. I agree with Helen on this because most sites won't have that, and most doctors still don't want to get that.
it's more complicated for sure, without a doubt. But you can still do trials with Schedule One product.
Well, the whole argument is
So
should THC and psychedelics be on Schedule 1? Like, do they have addictive potential? And
they
that's the
do.
whole they do.
So now, you know what? Who am I to say? If it's Schedule One right now, I assume someone's done those studies to say it's Schedule One. Now we might say that we need to reassert and reevaluate, and I'm fine with that. Like to me, everything's fair game, but you don't get to keep having the same bite at the same apple over and over, hoping to get a different result.
I see.
So we'll see.
That's a good way to put it.
Um,
So, should people continue to be hysterical, or what should they
no,
do?
I think wait. Your hysteria can wait for another 2 months, and then if it's time to get hysterical, like let's see where we are.
Then we'll join you.
Then then we'll join you.
Yeah, something tells me that's not gonna be the case. It's
I think people who are going to get hysterical are going to get hysterical anyways, and the people
mm,
who aren't going to get hysterical aren't going to get hysterical anyways. And then there's the people in the middle, and those are people who either don't know, don't care, or can't figure it out.
what do people? You're in
Um,
India right now. What do people in India think about what's going on here?
it's funny, like the most random dude came up to me going, "I'm glad Trump got elected." I'm like, dude, you have no idea who Trump actually is.
Are the
Or if he
majority
has an
Trump
opinion.
fans over there,
I couldn't tell, to be perfectly honest. I haven't had enough conversations to know, but
or are they indifferent? Like it doesn't to them. It doesn't
no,
matter.
they definitely have opinions. I just don't know what they are. I haven't had that conversation. I agree with Helen, by the way. S2 is high enough. One is no medicinal value. The question is, it's not no medicinal value. It's does the medicinal value outweigh the risks? So I'm agreeing with you, Helen. I think it's just going to play itself out a little bit more. We'll get more data.
Well, another
Actually,
great
Helen may
fraud
be
pod.
right. DEA defines it, isn't it? But yeah, fraud pod. Check this out again.
Another great
Love
fraud
this.
pod. I should have said this at the beginning. I turned off all ads on my YouTube. I'm trying to get to 100,000 subs by the end of 25. And I think I can do it. I think I figured out how. And the first step is not to get banned. So, unfortunately, this podcast didn't do much to help that cause. But hopefully, future ones, we're going to continue to just have real discussions, man. And I'm one to have
Yeah.
changed my mind many times. And I constantly
I'm
am
with,
changing my mind.
I'm with you. I'm with you. And I'm trying. And one day I'm going to grow up to be just like Dan Safara.
Nah, man, you don't need to. You're already good how you are, man. Like, subscribe, comment, share, and go connect with Darshan right now.
That's right.
If you haven't,
Darshan
I don't
talks.
know what's, yeah, I don't know what's wrong with you if you haven't. Bye bye.